I went on air today, it was about 5 to 9, maybe 10 to 9. I received an email from the Vegan Education Group, Halifax, Nova Scotia. In the subject line, it was New Brunswick, Nova Scotia Dairy is Scary campaign, censorship, and other challenges to freedom of expression. And there was a PDF attached, which I've been trying to scan through while doing the show here, and I haven't really got to a lot of it. So I'm going to be relying on kind of feeling my way through this next chat, but I know that a lot of people talked about this, and I thought it'd be something that we should cover. So joining me to discuss all of this is Bill Wilson. Bill, how are you today?
I'm well, Todd. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. So you're, just for everybody, for clarity, your title is what here?
I'm one of the directors with Vegan Education Group in Halifax and Vegan Education Group NB.
Right. Okay. And we've had chats before, so I just wanted to let everybody know who you're representing. So what's the issue? What is at issue here, if you will? Lay this out for us.
Well, there's several things that we experienced during this campaign that we believe, that does get in the way of our message, or minimizes our message, or makes it a lot harder for us to get our message out there. I'd like to start with a complaint that was made to Ad Standards Canada. Mm-hmm. Ad Standards Canada administers the Canadian Code of Advertising Standards, which sets the criteria for acceptable advertising and forms the basis for the review and adjudication of consumer and trade complaints. So essentially the complaint said that the video that we direct people to on our billboards, the one made by Aaron Janis, is called "Dairy is Scary." It's on YouTube. Misleads Maritimers and Canadians. So the complaint said that Aaron is an American, that the footage is based on the American dairy industry. So thankfully, Animal Justice Canada, a legal organization that fights for animals, they've been involved with some high-profile issues. They wrote a 15-page response that substantiated all the claims made in Aaron's video. Also, Aaron
in fairness, Bill, you say substantiates, but the fact they agreed with it doesn't. I don't know if substantiate. They agreed with what they backed up what you're saying, right?
Well, first of all, Aaron is a Canadian activist. That was a mistake. The footage does include Canadian farming. Mm-hmm. This is actually just read right from the very beginning of their 15-page report. Okay. So one of the claims is that the Canadian industry has much more stricter guidelines, is completely different than the American model. Mm-hmm. So the dairy security video depicts footage filmed in many countries and jurisdictions, but all the practices identified in her video are consistent with practices that are standard in the Canadian dairy industry. It's worth noting that not all cow's milk sold in Canada is produced exclusively by Canadian dairy operations. Mm-hmm. Fluid milk and other dairy products produced in the United States have long been sold in the Canadian market. With the new trade agreements, the marketplace takes in more. Up to 18% of cow sales in Canada are imported milk, and from places in Europe. So it's not just simply Canada, but even if it wasn't, what was shown in the video is consistent, and it was backed up in this response with sources from the actual industry. Mm-hmm. So this is what we got back from Ad Standards Canada. Right. Based on your response, we did not identify an issue under the code. So I think this cements the claims made in the video and our billboards.
Okay, so you say you've been censored. Are your ads still, have you been ordered to remove these ads anywhere, these billboards?
Well, of course, in that case, no. But we did have another issue in Fredericton. We had ordered bus ads that were going to carry the image of Aaron Janis and her "Dairy is Scary" video, YouTube, one with that symbol, and the other one that says "Dairy takes my mom, my milk, and then my life." So months before, We were told that everything was fine through Pattison Outdoor, who was dealing with Fredericton Transit Authority on the other end.
Yeah.
And the week that they were supposed to get up, we get an email saying that the Fredericton Transit Authority has decided not to put up the one about with the calf image and about the dairy took my mom, my milk, and then my life. Mm-hmm. So it took us some time to figure out what we were going to do. We ended up getting some counsel, legal counsel, who wrote to the Fredericton Transit Authority a letter basically saying that they were infringing on our freedom of expression, and that there has been precedent set on this as far as a public entity like a city versus, Pattison being a private company, mm-hmm. that they should have to, run our ads. Now, our council gave them so much time to respond. They did not respond. And in the end, because our campaign is fairly short, to go forward with it, it may have been, at least to my understanding, maybe a moot point after the campaign was over if it had gone to court. Mm-hmm. So because we were told a week of, it made it very hard to fight. And, it raises some questions. They felt like they had to be mindful of consumers. This is what a spokesperson for the city told the New Brunswick paper, basically that they want to promote diverse perspectives, but they want to also be mindful of consumers. Mm-hmm. Now, people want to tend to say, hey, it's important to know where your food comes from. So it's hard for us to understand why showing a live calf and some statements that are facts about the industry would be a problem, especially considering that there are many ads with burgers and chicken wings and milk that are everywhere. Now, these...
Bill, I have a question for Ed. Here in the Halifax area, was there anybody at any point lodging complaints or lobbying to disallow you to have your billboards on the Bedford Highway?
I'm not sure. The complaint, I believe, I don't think we know officially, or even know if I'm allowed to say where the complaint came from. Mm-hmm. Just that, it is a Canadian citizen.
Yeah, well, I'll leave that up to you. So it seems to me that the Ad Standards Canada, in the end, supported your position. Did they? Or did I misinterpret what you said?
They did,
there?
And that is the most important point of that issue, is that based on our response, they did not identify with an issue under the code. So that implies, I think it's logical to think that it implies that, well, they didn't think anything was wrong. Yeah. And that means that we're telling the truth. Okay. And that Aaron's video, Dairy is Scary, tells the truth.
All right, let me ask you this, because we're tight on time. I want to make sure we get to all this.
Sure.
The implication is, I think it's fair that most people, that you don't have a disclaimer suggesting that the video is from different parts of the world. Maybe you do or don't you. Is that identified in the video? Okay. If it's not,
it does contain footage from different parts of the world.
It does, but I'm saying
But the point is,
I want to ask this question. So it's my belief that when people watch this video, the assumption is this is our dairy farms that surround us. That I think is a fair, safe assumption that most people would draw that conclusion. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I would agree. Now, where they're going with that, I think, is what's important to note is that the video shows mostly legal, standardized practices. Some of that footage comes from other countries, some is in Canada, but the point is, ad standards agreed that what is being showed, that part is, if it was maybe shown in the U.S., that's what would happen in Canada too. But there is at the end of the video some footage taken from an undercover investigation that was done. It was the Chillivack investigation a few years ago. There were some people jailed for it that showed abuse beyond what is legal. Yeah. So that is Canadian. There's the stuff that's shown that's legal, standardized. Maybe the footage doesn't come from Canada, but that wouldn't matter.
Well, not maybe. You just said it doesn't. There's no maybe. It doesn't, right? Yeah. Okay. Bill, I'm out of time. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. And hopefully you got your message out. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Todd.
Take care. Bill Wilson with the Vegan Education Group. My attitude is this. If you're going to show footage from other countries, fine. But let that be known. You could put it somewhere. You could somewhere in some captions or something saying, not all this footage is Canadian, but we feel that it's representative. I don't know how you want to word it, but I think that's a fair grievance that the industry would have in this video. It's just my take on it. I'm a huge proponent of freedom of speech right across the board. Everybody knows that. Massive. And I think that needs to be protected. But I also think that you need to be as accurate as you can. And in this case, a disclaimer saying this footage is not all of Canadian farms. I have no problem. I think that was perhaps where they missed a mark. Again, like I always say, just my opinion. I'd like to thank Matt Brand, the producer, of course, of the show. And, of course, Rick for having me sit in as he continues to